And perfect. And in 5 minutes, we'll play the video.
Welcome everyone that is joining us. ברוכים הבאים. We'll be letting more people in before we start very shortly. Thank you. To everyone who's joining us, thank you so much. Welcome. ברוכים הבאים. We're going to start in 1 minute. Thank you for your patience. And great to see you all. Such a big group joining us.
The movement's never been bigger than it is right now.
We pay tuition, this is our school, and they're not letting me walk in. Which river, which sea?
The Sea of...
Divest. Shut down Tel Aviv.
Calling for the genocide of Jews violates Harvard Code of Conduct, correct?
Again, it depends on the context.
We are Hamas! One day, somebody brings the guillotine and kills all of you.
There was no anti-Semitism. A peaceful protest.
Very peaceful protest.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Trying to share. Do you see my screen? Just will share.
No, we saw it earlier, but not now.
Yeah, sure. Just a sec. Of course, it has to happen. Sure. Just 1 second, please. Zoom. There it is. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. We're really honored to have such a phenomenal big group to join us this evening to discuss the findings of the recent congressional report on anti-Semitism on campus across 11 major universities. As we just saw in this video, all these peaceful protests and no anti-Semitism. This video just provided us a glimpse of the hostility and fear that our Jewish students, faculty, and staff are facing. My name is Sagit Sade Attia. I am the National Senior Director of Academic Action in the Israeli-American Council. I will be facilitating this webinar to have this meaningful conversation about the report. I am sure that many of those, vulnerable feelings of the hate that's spewed against our people resonates with so many of us, and it very much deepened upon October 7th. And this hatred, especially when it comes from influential faculty members who should be guiding our young minds. I have a senior that's about to go to college, and I strongly want to suggest that we cannot and must not allow those haters to define who we are and our community. I do want to suggest that this is not only a fight against anti-Semitism, but this is a moment that calls us to articulate our peoplehood clearly. So this is a moment of reflection and profound self-definition for us to stand together as the Jewish and Israeli community, rooted in our heritage, with the unbreakable bond and connection to Israel, and with deep ties to each other as well. The Congress support in investigating these issues is very powerful, and as you could see, and our honorable speakers are going to talk on how Congress has stepped up to investigate thoroughly and address this as an essential issue. And I do want to suggest that this is just the beginning. This is in no way the end of this. It's just a milestone in this process. And the Congress has set the foundation with this report. with us tonight, we have two remarkable leaders, Elan Carr and Alyza Lewin. Elan Carr's extensive experience in combating anti-Semitism, including his work with the White House Special Envoy to fight anti-Semitism and as a president of API. And he'll speak to how this congressional report can shape the future of accountability in higher education and way more. And Alyza Lewin, who is the president of Brandeis Center, that had dedicated herself for the Jewish people and for a lot of legal work, Title VI and Title VII protection. I would say a leader in this arena. And she will provide crucial insight into the anti-Semitism often how it often hides behind political narratives and what we can do about it. So I invite you to take a quick look at what this is, an overview of what is this report about in the third slide. Quick overview before we dive into the depth of this report and for our honorable speakers. So slide 3, I think, is where we should be now. The next one, thank you. These are the 4 major areas of the investigation, and which shows the investigation was launched on December 23 by Virginia Fox, the chairwoman of the Committee for Workforce and Education. And that was as a result of the surge in violence on campus against Jews and Israeli students, staff, and faculty, encampments, and with a lot of faculty involvement and with, unfortunately, a failure of university leaders to act. The committee has launched an unprecedented investigation, which we can see in the next slide, and had, again, unprecedentedly sent subpoenas to 7 university presidents to be investigated. We all remember this moment of Claudine Gay from Harvard University being investigated and talking about the context and the way university leaders were not able to speak in clear language and enforce their own rules. The investigation included 4 hearings, which we, as the Israeli American Council and the Academic Action, attended one of those hearings and helped compile several reports to the Congress to shed a light on what's happening on universities. 11 universities were investigated and more than 400,000 documents were reviewed. I do want to mention here that it was very hard for the committee to get all those documents. There was no great and excellent cooperation from those universities. And what's interesting in this report is that the committee had asked to review all the email correspondence of the university emails. And that really put a spotlight on the approach that they took internally, which showed a very disappointing approach of addressing this issue rather as an essential issue, just as a public relation matter that we'll see how it was addressed in a very superficial level. And I think we're ready to have Elan. Elan Carr, the Israeli-American CEO. Well, we have a slide that just shows a little bit of Elan's reputable experience. Elan was the president of API for 10 years, and then he was appointed to the special envoy to fight anti-Semitism. Every time I hear him talk about it, I learn something new. So I'm sure I'm going to learn something new today too. And I do want to ask you, Elan, if you could share a little bit about the experience he had and what made you really foresee what we were experiencing in this explosion of anti-Semitism on campus. And not only this report here on the center, on the bottom right corner, was submitted on May 2023, and on after October 7th, we all witnessed this explosion on campus. And if, then after, share this experience and then tell us what is the role of Congress as you view it in addressing this essential issue.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you, Sagit. Pleasure to be here. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for making time and spending time with us to discuss this most important issue. I want to thank the great staff, not only at IAC, but at the Brandeis Center. Always a pleasure to work with Alyza and her amazing team. And so it's really great, and I appreciate you all being here for this. Let me take a step back and first highlight how deeply important it is that a committee of the United States House of Representatives did this at all. I mean, think about it. You know, the United States of America in Congress, a committee devoted enormous resources to ferret out and to expose this problem of campus anti-Semitism. And I don't think we should take that for granted. I think we have to be very, very, very appreciative of, first of all, the leadership of Chairwoman Virginia Fox, other committee members, of course, Elise Stefanik, who made such an impact. But it is really enormously important. And to understand why this report comes at an urgent time, let me take you back a little bit and kind of survey what has happened on campuses in the last few years. This did not start with October 7th. This started decades ago when the enemies of the Jewish people in Israel decided that investing in the educational systems of America was the best, most efficient way, perhaps the only way, of undermining US support for Israel in the long term. And that's why campuses have become so central. This is years of work and investment, and it's become worse and worse and worse. Sagit mentioned I was president of AEPI. I supervised, at one point, 10,000 students on 180 campuses. And I can tell you, many of those students, many of those campuses, it was the front lines of the fight for really the legitimacy of the Jewish people in the face of enormous harassment. I want to tell you just one story. I mean, I could tell you 100, but just one story. A kid in one of the most prominent universities in the United States, really in the world, gave me the answer sheet to his math class. And, you know, math class in college, you know, the integral of such and such is so-and-so, and the derivative of so-and-so. And then it says, another day in the occupied Palestinian territories, Zionist forces murdering children. And then it goes back to math. And the kid who gave this to me said in a voice reflecting utter exhaustion, he said, in math class, I can't even escape this. Even in math class, that's right. The answer is that's right. You can't escape it even in math class, because like the primitive medieval anti-Semitism, this anti-Semitism that focuses on Jewish peoplehood and Zionism in Israel is just as obsessive and just as malicious in focusing on its targets. This is just one little tiny story from one campus and one kid, but this is the climate that our students are seeing. That's part of the reason why, and I don't know if Alyza, in case you weren't going to talk about this, Alyza, I'll mention that before October 7th, in a survey that the Brandeis Center did, they found that 70% of Jewish students active in Jewish organizations had recently experienced anti-Semitism in the last few months. And half of the kids surveyed felt the need to conceal their Jewish identity or support for Israel. Now, all of this was before October 7th. When October 7th happened, the monstrosity of that event, rather than embarrassing the anti-Semites of the world and driving them underground, unleashed a tsunami of Jew hatred that washed over our educational systems, certainly universities. And so that's where we are today. And I'll tell you, this report could not come at a better time. And the findings are shocking. The findings are, not only do you have students and student groups running amok and harassing Jewish students, marginalizing, vilifying Jews, creating a hostile environment. But what this report found, this is very, very important, what the report found clearly is that universities are overtly complicit in that harassment and vilification. And that's really the story here, the complicity of university administrators and university faculty. So, number one, a key finding is that there was an egregious failure by universities to support their Jewish students. Now, just stop there for a moment, right? You've got students, they pay money, they pay to go to school. They're the constituents of these universities, and they're enduring something very difficult and very painful. This has been happening for years again, but since October 7th, after the slaughter, the butchery of Jews, people on campuses were calling for more of the same, more butchery and more elimination of Jews, right? Total failure on the part of many universities to support their Jewish students. Now, that would be bad enough. If that were the only finding, we would say, you know what, that's appalling and unacceptable and inexcusable, but it goes far beyond that. Another key finding, a failure by these universities to enforce their own rules and to exert disciplinary measures against people who are violating their rules. So when you have the encampments or other forms of harassment, graffiti, you would have, globalize the Intifada, or from the river to the sea, graffiti spray painted on buildings on campus. There was a woeful unwillingness of the university and the administrators to enforce their own rules against anti-Semitic students and anti-Semitic movements on campus that were marginalizing and really persecuting Jewish students. But then it gets even worse. And phase 3, the other key finding, is that the university was often complicit by giving actual concessions to these anti-Semitic movements, anti-Semitic events, encampments, harassment, denial of access of Jewish students to parts of campus, right? Shutting down, you saw it in the movie, shutting down access to certain parts of campus. Not only didn't they enforce the rules, not only didn't they support their Jewish students, but they were overtly complicit in that by giving those anti-Semitic movements actual concessions, real concessions in terms of dealing with them. What are some examples? One key finding is at Northwestern, they put radical anti-Israel faculty in charge of negotiating with the encampment. In one case, a provost, right? I mean, that's a very, very senior academic administrator, agreed to the boycott of Sabra Hummus on that campus. And these are the kinds of the actual concessions given to movements that whose entire purpose was to spew anti-Semitism, marginalize, vilify, harass Jewish students. Now, about that, let me say something, because Sagit wanted me to close this part of our program, my remarks, with a little bit about the role of the federal government and Congress. Look, anti-Semitism, most of it, right? Most anti-Semitic expression that's not criminal is protected speech. It's not a violation of the law to hate Jews or to say you hate Jews. But what is a violation of the law is to harass and discriminate against people. And when a hostile climate obtains on a campus, and when Jewish students are harassed and discriminated against, when Jewish students cannot enjoy equal access to the educational resources of the campus, that is discriminatory. And discrimination is not protected by the First Amendment. And so don't let anyone tell you, well, I can do what I want because anti-Semitism is protected speech. Well, yeah, anti-Semitism is protected speech, but harassment and discrimination is not. And I will tell you that this report, which finds egregious violations by universities in terms of protecting Jewish students, in terms of enforcing their rules, in terms of the concessions they're giving to these anti-Semitic movements, the follow-on to that was a federal court finding, an actual order by a federal judge against the UC Regents, the entire UC system. Based on what happened at UCLA, a federal judge found, now this is again a finding by a court, right? This isn't, a hearing in Congress. Now we're talking about an actual judicial finding that Jewish students were not allowed to enjoy access to resources at UCLA on a systemic and repeated basis. Now think about that. At the University of California, Jewish students were not allowed equal access to resources on campus. And you know what that judge did? That judge found it in violation of federal law and ordered, it was cease and desist. You must cease from doing this, and you must actively allow all Jewish students to access those resources or not provide those resources to anybody. That's an option, but you can't allow some students to access them and Jews not. And so we see a role of the federal government enforcing federal law. And so number one, there's federal law, Civil Rights Act, Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, right? Laws against discrimination and harassment. All of that have to be enforced by the federal government. But then there's something else. And let me talk about this very, very important piece. And with this, I'll close. It's not only about enforcing federal law. The federal government has enormous influence and impact on the state of education in the United States, not through the law, but through its spending powers. Because when Congress appropriates money and spends money, Congress has a right to demand that strings be attached to that federal money that's being given to any institution. And so while it's true that the regulation of education and the management of education is not a federal issue, it's entirely a state and sometimes a local issue. But what's also true is that the moment that the United States government subsidizes any process, including educational processes, the United States government has a say and Congress has a say. And so what needs to happen, in addition to merely enforcing violations of law, which, by the way, was a very, very important good start, but that's not the finish. What has to also happen is Congress has to start getting very, very serious about attaching conditions to the subsidies of educational institutions. And those conditions aren't just about complying with federal law. Those conditions could be, well, how about we start to teach Western civilization? How about that a key to receiving federal money is that we teach critical thinking, right? These things are, or civics, right? Basic American values, a Western curriculum, a critical thinking, the ability to evaluate arguments in a debate. These are all things that could make an enormous difference, not only in fighting Jew hatred that is now a metastatic cancer in our educational institutions, but also fighting, the climate of polarization and the dynamic of hatred and mutual lack of understanding that we're seeing in America today, and certainly in colleges today and in schools today, by starting to teach basic principles of civics and critical thinking. That would go a long way, not only to making the situation better in campus, but also to preparing our students for being responsible citizens in the United States. Wouldn't that be a great thing, not only for the Jewish people here, but for our country and our body politic?
Elan, thank you so much. The perfect time to and the last point of our people are protected under the U.S. Constitution, and the U.S. Constitution mirrors our rights as peoplehood in the United States. And I think we can share the slide to present Alyza Lewin, a great partner of the Israeli-American Council in our community, the president of Brandeis Center for Human Rights. Alyza wears two hats. The first hat, she's a litigator, a fierce fighter for human rights, has a law firm in partnership with her father. And the second hat is the president of Brandeis Center. And Alyza is, I have to say something on a personal note here. Every case that we need urgent help or non-urgent help, I've never had a refusal or a delay from Brandeis Center. They pick up every call at every time, and morning, evenings, late at night. And it's so deeply appreciated because we need all the support that we can get. And I want to just extend a big thank you. And also to invite you to speak about, you have it's really hard in one sentence to, share about all your experience. And if you can share a little bit about your experience, and then some of the points that are in the slide that we'll get off in a second is, how your take on how anti-Semitism is disguised as a political conversation and political debate in order to mask anti-Semitism and hate. And how all of these efforts on campus and outside campus, actually, too, are aimed towards erasing our identity as peoplehood with our connection to Israel, and erasing our history with false narratives and propaganda, and how this all connects to your Title VI work on campuses. We'd love to hear that, and I can walk you, if you forget any of the questions, I can remind later, but thanks. So just without further ado, Alyza, and we can take off the slide to see Alyza speak.
Thank you. Thank you, Sagit. I don't know, I still see you on the slide, so let's see. There we go.
Yeah, in a sec.
Okay, so
Thanks.
I thank you, Sagit. I thank you, Elan, and the IAC for putting this together and inviting me to participate. As Sagit mentioned, I'm an attorney. I'm based in Washington, D.C. I have handled both with the law practice with my father, various cases, some which you may be aware of, for American citizens who have children born in Jerusalem. We handled what became known as the Jerusalem passport case, which involved the right of an American citizen to have Israel listed as their place of birth on their U.S. passport if they're born in Jerusalem, because until President Trump recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, the position of the United States was that no part of Jerusalem, not east, not west, was actually in Israel. That was changed, and as a result of our case, President Trump's recognition of Jerusalem and recognition of the Golan Heights as being in Israel have not been challenged in court and won't, because the court actually recognized that the president has the exclusive authority to recognize foreign sovereigns. We also represented Avi Zinger, the manufacturer and distributor of Ben & Jerry's ice cream in Israel, to protect him and ensure and block basically the desired boycott of Ben & Jerry's in Israel. So Avi now has the rights to manufacture and distribute the same authentic Ben & Jerry's ice cream using the Hebrew and the Arabic logos. So in Israel, go buy Ben & Jerry's. And so about 7 years ago, I came to the Brandeis Center. The full name is the Louis D. Brandeis Center for Human Rights Under Law. We are not connected to Brandeis University. We're a separate nonprofit headquartered in Washington, D.C., but we work with students and faculty and staff on campuses across the country. We also now are working with employees in corporations who are experiencing anti-Semitism, and the idea was to set up a nonprofit that uses legal tools to combat anti-Semitism, because the law is a very powerful motivator. The entities don't want to be on the wrong side of the law. And as Elan was mentioning, one of the powerful tools, the legal tools that we use on university campuses, is called Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, which is a law that says that any institution that receives federal government funding, that money comes with strings attached. And the strings are basically that the institution has to make sure that any opportunity it provides is provided in a non-discriminatory way, which means everybody has to have equal access to both, if it's a school, to academic opportunities, to extracurricular opportunities, whatever the school offers, everyone has to have equal access. If you have individuals or community group that are being shunned and pushed out, they're being excluded, there are spaces that they can't engage, there are opportunities that they can't partake in because of their identity, right? Their race, color, national origin, then the universities or the institutions that receive the money are at risk of losing those funding unless they take steps to make sure that everybody has the equal access. So that includes, right, if you're talking about Israelis, national origin discrimination would mean that Israelis can't be shunned or excluded. For Jews, even though religion is not one of the protected categories, for the last 20 years, the understanding has been that if you have members of faith-based groups being targeted on the basis of their shared ancestry or ethnicity, that's covered. They're protected by Title VI. So for Jews who identify as part of a people indigenous to the land of Israel, they say we're part of a people and our history and heritage, our ancestry is rooted in the land of Israel. If they're being targeted on that basis and denied the equal opportunity on that basis, right? We hear now on the campuses, Zionists aren't welcome. Zionists may not be in my club. Zionists out, right? So if they're being forced to try to shed this part of who they are or this identity in order to fully engage, that could be a violation of Title VI, and the university is at risk of losing their funds. One of the things that we see in this report is that universities are not going to be able to effectively address the anti-Semitism on their campus unless and until they understand, first of all, what anti-Semitism is, and unless and until they understand Israeli and Jewish identity. And so one of the things that we see is universities repeatedly have a mistaken impression of what's going on their campus. They think that what they're witnessing is a political debate, but it's not. Most of the time, especially now and post October 7th, it's very, very few and hard to find the people that actually want to engage in any kind of real good faith conversations, discussions about how can we work through these issues and reach some peace and coexistence. Most of the folks who are demonstrating and responsible for the very loud, hostile rhetoric on the campuses and in the classrooms are not interested in the conversation, not interested in the political debate. What they really are doing and what their motivation is to push the Jew or the Israeli out of acceptable society. They're vilifying that individual, the Jew, on the basis of what defines them as Israeli or Jewish, right? They're equating that with evil. For years, we saw this going on. In fact, Einat Wilf, a former member of Knesset, she calls it the placard strategy. For years, even before October 7th, we saw this very simple equation, the idea of the Magen David equals the Zionist equals whatever that evil concept is. It could be ethnic cleansing, apartheid, colonialism, now genocide. Those concepts are not being put out there because somebody wants to actually have a conversation to discuss, is it really apartheid? Is it really genocide? No, they want that there because they're trying to drill into the minds of the student body that Jew, symbolized by the Magen David, is a Zionist, is evil. That's it. And what's happened after October 7th is you started to see the signs that said, well, now let's clean our world and our society. And you saw the picture of the trash basket with the Magen David inside, right? The idea is now that we've decided that the Jews are evil, we're going to make our place a better world by getting rid of the Jew. We're going to push the Jew. We're going to push the Israeli out of acceptable society. That's what's happening on the campus. And the universities don't recognize it. They don't see that marginalizing, that discrimination. And so one of the things we have to do is talk about what's happening using the language of harassment and discrimination. Don't take the bait. If the folks are not interested in having a conversation about the policies, about the politics, don't try to answer it as if you want to talk about the politics, because you're just going to then reinforce for the university administrators that this is about a political debate when it's not. Okay, you have to talk about it as the harassment and discrimination that it is. And so you can see that even from this report. The other thing that university administrators don't recognize is that what's happening on campus today is an actual erasure and denial of Jewish history and Jewish identity. What do I mean by that? There is a narrative now that is being accepted on campus as scholarship. And it is a narrative that is the foundation and underlies all of these courses that are being taught, both in universities and also now in ethnic studies classes in K through 12. And this narrative is a narrative that says everything that happened in what we refer to as the land of Israel, but they'll say everything that's happened here since creation is Palestinian. Yes, they'll acknowledge there were Jews, there were Christians, there were Muslims that lived in this land, but those identities are just religious identities. They'll say, according to this narrative, that the cultural or ethnic identity of all the humans who lived in this land since the beginning of time is Palestinian. That's the cultural ethnic identity. That's how you get, some people may have heard, those who will say that Jesus was a Palestinian. And now they are putting forth, they've coined a term for it. They call this anti-Palestinian racism. And that is anything that pushes back against that narrative. So if you say, I believe I'm part of a people, I'm Israeli. My history, my heritage, my people lived in this land for centuries. You dig the dirt, you find the archaeology that shows that. They'll say, now you're a racist if you say that, because you're erasing and denying Palestinian history and heritage. So this, we now call that erasive anti-Semitism. That's another piece that universities don't see. They don't recognize. And we need to be able to, when we explain and talk to the university administrators about what's actually happening on campus, we need to be able to show them this erasive anti-Semitism. So this is part of what the Brandeis Center does. As Sagit was saying, we're here to work with you and to help you. And I think if we're going to come back and talk some more, as we go through this, we'll talk some more about some of the specific examples of how the universities need to be able to call out this harassment and discrimination of the Israelis and the Jews on their campus. They need to be able to recognize it for the discrimination that it is, and take meaningful steps to discipline the students that are causing this exclusion, even including faculty, if faculty are targeting and isolating and marginalizing students. They need to be able to take these kinds of meaningful steps and push back, both use their voice and use the power of the enforcement to change the situation on the campus. If not, they could risk losing their federal funding.
Thank you, Alyza. It's always fascinating to listen to you. I would like to take a moment to ask everyone if they can put some questions in the chat. I'm going to do a quick few minutes of just a few graphs that we want to emphasize from the insights of the report. And then we will convene together, Alyza and Elan, to talk about next steps and what we can do, because we think this is the most important area for discussion today. So we already see a few questions, and I can raise those questions and frame the dialogue between Elan and Alyza to discuss next steps. What I really want to show is the a few graphs that we created. I think I'm having the issue of presenting again, so let's see if I can put the graphs. If not, we'll just jump into the questions. Just give me 1 sec to see if it works. Awesome. No, I can't present for some reason. So we'll just, I'll just quickly, awesome. So within the key insights, we try to articulate the two major revelations that were striking to me personally and in general with this work that we do in academia. And two major insights were, I think, stuck with me for a while, and I was shocked. One is the lack of action and failure of administration. And this is a graph that we made just of a specific time, a period of time of the encampments on those campuses. And you could see, for example, just give one quick example, UC Berkeley, 10 incidents. And when I say 10 incidents, it's 10 incidents reported to the university and 10 incidents reports by UC Berkeley to the Congress for this period of time. So there must have been way more, a higher volume of incidents. And what you could see is only one disciplinary action, which was a probation that ended up with nothing, not even a suspension from school. And that was for physical harassment. So it's not speech, it's conduct. And you could see that there's no accountability in this. So you just wanted to emphasize it because the numbers sometimes give a better perspective. And so the next slide is focusing on the impact of faculty on this whole hostile environment. Now, think about it for a second. Faculty has way more impact on campus and on hostile environment than any student. Faculty has way more authority on campus. They can invite anyone they want to invite on campus. We all know that UC, if you spoke about UC Berkeley, and we can move to the next slide, We all spoke about UC Berkeley. We know Khatam Baizan, who leads all the anti-Israel activity on campus, but it's not only that they're involved in protest and creating and orchestrating this environment many times they're also preventing from the university to take accountability and responsibility for those matters. So we try to categorize this five categories of advocacy for leniency, blocking formal measures. There are universities in which faculty members intervened to block any action against students for violating the campus regulation and harassing Jews and Israeli students. And the numbers, I think that the numbers are, they speak volumes too, but think about 25 incidents what does that signal to our community when faculty are not only involved in that and encouraging that, but also blocking accountability. And with that, I want to reconvene with Elan and Alyza and share some of the questions that we already see on the chat. And so the framework of this dialogue, which we're going to take for 10 more minutes, and then we're going to open it for 8 more minutes, and then we're going to open it for a few minutes of more questions if we have, and then just wrap up, is one. So I see one question, and Elan, and I think we can take off the slide. Yeah.
Sagit, let me jump in and just say something very important about reporting. You said, you just said a very critical point here, that we can assume there's dramatic underreporting. And so the domain that we begin with is very, very, very small and not accurately reflecting the level of problem. That's absolutely true. And I want to give you one example. Now, there are different ways to report, right? Universities might catalog these things in a certain way, but if they do use the rules of the Department of Education, which is usually the case, there is a problem of underreporting. So an anti-Semitic incident is only considered as such and will only be categorized as such if the targeted group, namely a Jew, is the victim. Okay, now, what does victimization mean? I used to be a criminal prosecutor, right? You know what a victim is in the case of graffiti? The owner of the property. That's the victim when you have graffiti. So all of these cases of campus graffiti, Free Palestine, swastikas, from the river to the sea, all of these things, if it's not on a Jewish-owned building like Hillel or Chabad or AEPI, if it's just on a campus building, that is not a reportable incident. Now, that rule, I believe, was not changed. When I discovered this when I was in government, we were working to change that very rule on how anti-Semitism is categorized. But you should know that rules like this create a dramatic underreporting of anti-Semitic incidences. And even the ones that we have, right, we see a lot of them. And then, of course, very low numbers of disciplinary measures. But keep in mind that the domain is likely much, much, much larger than the numbers we have. So I just wanted to jump in and add that.
No, that's super important. Thank you for that. And within that, I would like to encourage each and every one of you to continue reporting to us, calling us, to aid other Jewish organizations that are collecting this data. It is super important for us to shed light on those experiences, and really urge you to continue doing that. And we'll talk about it at the end. I want to call you again, Elan and Alyza. Yeah,
if I can just comment also on the reporting. So it's important for our organizations and for IAC and for everyone to be able to keep track of what's happening on campus and for people to report it to you. Usually what you have with the universities is the universities will tell you to file a bias complaint or a report with their internal bias review system. And there you actually have to be careful because yes, universities need to be given notice. You can't expect a university to fix something that has no idea that it even happened. On the other hand, it can get challenging because if the university is really a university that's doing nothing about the anti-Semitism problem, and if, as we've seen, many of these bias complaint offices, the DEI offices, they don't even recognize the nature and understand, as we were talking about it, the nature of anti-Semitism, the nature of Jewish identity. So at the end of the day, they just treat everything as if it's a political debate and say it's speech, we can't do anything. So the problem is if you file the complaint that triggers the universities and has the university do an investigation, and then nothing comes of that investigation, you give up and kind of remove the ability of the Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights to do its own investigation. Because the Department of Education, one of the ways it clears its docket is if it says, well, there's another entity that's doing the investigation of this set of facts, we're not going to conduct the investigation. And they don't, at the Department of Education, second guess the outcome of the investigation that the university did. So if you want to be able to use the leverage and the pressure of having an Office of Civil Rights investigation, sometimes what is preferable is to just be sending an informal email to the appropriate dean or to some administrator notifying them of what happened, but not actually filing the complaint that would trigger the university's investigation. And to know when is the right time to file or how to notify the university, reach out to the Brandeis Center, reach out to Sagit, have Sagit connect you with the Brandeis Center, and we can help give you the guidance on how to handle these situations. But make sure Sagit knows about the incident, but get some guidance before you actually file a formal bias complaint that would trigger a university investigation.
Absolutely. I cannot echo that enough. We have just a few more minutes, and I just want to pause for a second again and tell you that we're going to be wrapping up a few minutes after 9 in a very, very slight delay. But then we were going to say goodbye to Alyza and Elan, but the IAC team is going to stay and answer any of your other questions. So I'm going to just pull out a few questions that I've seen here. Sherry is asking, and this is for both of you, Elan and Alyza, how do we get the campus administrators to talk with us when they ignore us parents? That's one question. Another question by Eitan is what legal actions are being taken directly against rioters on campuses, and the extreme who are vocally supporting Hamas. There's the reference to one of the codes, US code. If you can answer these two questions, because we have just a few more minutes.
So I think when it comes to parents, it's tricky. Universities really much prefer to be hearing from students as opposed to the parents. So it's important that you would have the details, but ideally, if you can get your child to have that conversation with the administrator, that's better. But I will tell you, parents are often, not always, alumni of schools. So if you're talking about your own school, then yes, get involved as the alums of the school. So you have dual, places where you can be speaking. Now, on the other hand, if you're talking about parents of K through 12 students, there the parents are incredibly important because there it's the parents who are the ones who represent their students and their child's interest. And the parents should be asking for copies of the curriculum. The parents should be getting engaged. And again, once you have the facts, come to us and we can help you present the case in a way that would get the university or the school to listen, because they realize now that this is not a political debate. This is actually the shunning or the harassment or the exclusion of Jews and Israelis. I will say, when you talk about the Hamas and the terror organizations, that is one of the problems on the campuses. This is the other question. You actually have students who are there pledging support for designated terror organizations, and the universities are very, very slowly, not nearly, even begrudgingly beginning to recognize that. They still, again, right, are treating this as a speech issue. And even worse, I will tell you that one of the problems that we have is that years ago, after 9/11, when the Department of Education was giving guidance as to what it means to target members of a faith-based community on the basis of their shared ancestry and ethnicity. So one of the examples they provided in their guidance was what's an example of targeting an Arab or a Muslim on the basis of their shared ancestry? After 9/11, the example was calling them a terrorist. Because if you have, after Osama bin Laden, a child sitting in middle school and some kid calls them a terrorist because they're Arab, that's targeting the Arab student on the basis of their shared ancestry or ethnicity, not on the basis of their religious practice. The problem is, today, you have students on campus who are pledging support for designated terror organizations, who are saying they want to further the goals, and they want to see multiple October 7ths and resistance at any, at all costs, at any level, and you have Jewish and Israeli students who are then calling those students who are saying this terrorists. And I am telling you that all of those students who are Arab and Muslim and who are demonstrating have been coached and told that if you are an Arab or Muslim student and you are called a terrorist, go file a complaint. And we are seeing a rise in these retaliatory, baseless complaints. But they're complaining and saying, oh, they harassed me on the basis of my shared ancestry and ethnicity. They called me a terrorist. And because it was written this way, the universities are treating these seriously, and they're actually dragging the people who say this before the disciplinary boards. So you have to be very careful in this regard. But I do think that universities are slowly beginning to realize that they have to impose real discipline, because the core group that you have right now is so radicalized and so extreme that if they don't impose discipline, they will totally lose control of their campuses. And that's which happened with some of the encampments, with the vandalizing of some of the buildings. So they're slowly realizing that they need that. They need to use their own voices to speak out. They can't appease the demonstrators. Appeasing demonstrators doesn't make the problem go away, it makes it worse. So these are some of the lessons that I think they're going to learn the hard way if they don't clamp down on what's happening.
Yeah, so on my behalf, let me say about parents dealing with addressing anti-Semitic incidences, let's say. Since October 7th of last year, we IAC now have directly handled and responded to over 700 individual incidences of anti-Semitism involving students. And when I say handled, I don't mean, made a declaration or a condemnation. I mean actual case worked. So one of the things we do, we've actually accompanied parents to meetings. Alyza is 100% right. First of all, K through 12, parents have absolute rights that are enshrined in law, because the education of your children is something that you have a right to be involved in. That's in the case in many, many, many states. And so their parents have actual rights to meet with administrators and principals and even school board meetings. But you have to know how to do that. It's not, this isn't something that a parent would necessarily know how to do. And so we have actually coached parents, trained them, we've accompanied them, we've gone into these meetings with them and really taken care of the case. It really case worked it. And that's made a difference. And I can tell you, we've gotten teachers fired. Now that hasn't happened often, but you might know with teachers unions, getting a teacher fired, it's like you need an act of the state legislature practically. We've had that, we've been able to get those results. And so I would say call us. Now on the college side, yeah, parents usually have far, far less of a role, but here too, IAC has been intensely involved. Half of those cases I talked about are college cases. And so here too, we've trained students, we've accompanied them to meetings. We've actually, when legal advice is needed, we have lawyers, but we've partnered with the Brandeis Center, and they really have the expertise when it comes to Title VI investigations. And so definitely reach out, avail yourselves of the resources, and learn not only what your rights are, but how best to deal with an incident when it happens. Because what you don't want to do is do this on the fly and end up hurting your case and not really addressing the problem. So it's very important you reach out to people who know how to do this.
Cannot echo that enough. I feel so bad for all the people who ask really, really good questions because we're running out of time when we have left only 5 minutes to address, what is it that we can do to help you? And taking the opportunity to thank you, Elan and Alyza, for this incredible investment, dedication, and this conversation. There are great questions. Stay afterwards. Some of them we could take. Some of them we can maybe schedule a follow-up. But we really want to wrap up and talk about the Shield Support Center, which is one of the newest and most it's really an initiative we strongly believe in, and it's a support center. It's basically a number you could call a phone within a phone call, just a phone call. You don't need to report. Don't need to write anything. You just call us, and we have a trained team by clinical psychologists and social workers, and by the Brandeis Center. The trainings are scheduled. The core team is already trained, and we are answering your kids' phone calls, your phone calls. It started with people saying, I don't know what to write. I don't know what to report. I just don't even understand what I was going through, and we need to digest it. And we have been addressing more than 100 cases. Now, this is different in a way that we're walking through the student or faculty or staff every step of the way, meaning from getting the phone call to doing the intake to helping validate the situation. And then if we need to refer to Brandeis, we actually make the connection and walk the student through the process. We don't just refer and leave. So we make sure we close the circle until this is finalized and solved. We sometimes help with academic accommodations. Sometimes we help prepare for meetings. And to echo what Alyza and Elan said about parents, faculty members can help you. We have great, amazing faculty members on campus that are willing to dedicate their time and give their students the support they need. So that's another thing I urge you to do and we can connect you to faculty members on your campus. We just find the right solution. There's no cookie cutter. There are no shortcuts here. And I want to say that I'm not gonna talk about the volume and numbers because if you save one person, you save the world. So metzil nefesh echad b'Israel, metzil olam umlo'o, and we really, really believe in that in Shield. So this is the phone number. We're gonna send you both the slides and the number and additional materials. And just quickly before I hand it out to Sophie, I would like to talk about the cross-organizational effort to connect to what Elan said and some of the points Alita touched. We have 3 different departments. You don't need to know that it's 3 different departments, okay? Because we are the Israeli American Council, but we want to work seamlessly to provide our community the resources they need. So we have on campus, we have the Students Mishelanu, and we have School Watch for K to 12, and we have civic engagement, and Sophie will talk about it in a second. And under academic action, which I lead, we have Academic Alliance, and we have the Shield, and we have more initiatives to come. And on top of that, we also have a lobbying organization, which is a sister organization to the IAC, who push the bills and support the bills of anti-BDS divestment and boycott against Israel. So there's like a holistic work here to make sure we're shielded, protected, and create a different, a new future for our people. And with that, I just want to hand out the stage for Sophie, who is our National Director of Community Engagement. And she will focus on the community engagement work that she does, and she can offer help with a really specific resource for you all that's coming soon. Sophie, please.
Thank you, Sagit. And thank you, Elan and Alyza, for fascinating webinar. My name is Sophie Turkey-Ayurman. I'm the National Director of Community Engagement in the Department of Civic Engagement and Fighting Anti-Semitism. Like Sagit mentioned before, we are working all the departments together. Our department strategy focusing in two pillars: the K-12 system and the community. And we work shoulder to shoulder with Michelanu and Academic Action, because, you know, everything is mixed. You know, as a community, you have kids in their college, you have kids at school. We're always working together. And of course, we're working with IC for Action. Our methodology empower the community to drive change through education. We're doing training for teens, for teachers, for parents, for community, and I will talk about it later because we have some gift for you. We're doing mobilization by call to action, by the social media and community mobilization, and we support, like Sagit mentioned, the Shield. We also supporting, and Elan talked about it before, we have the School Watch, provide support for parents and students and teachers to deal with the incidents and challenges at school, and unfortunately we had so many in the last year. But we are doing a lot of things, and we'll find time to talk about it in another time. But I want to focus to give you an immediate chance to join us and become more active in your local community. There's two things we want to offer you to join immediately. One, it's 5 minutes for Israel. This is a newsletter, online newsletter nationally, that we're sending you urgent calls to action and issue that you need to protest, and with just one click you can lead your support. And we want to offer you one more thing. We are going to open on Monday civic engagement one-on-one course, and our professional team from our department, and Sagit will be there too, and people from Michelanu, and we are going to offer the community tools and knowledge, because we understand after the last year how much we need to educate ourselves and to be ready and unit to deal with all this situation outside. We will share with you the links to the course, and feel free to reach out with us for more information. But this is amazing opportunity for you to learn how the American system working, and how we can be more involved and create an impact. And that's all. Thank you.
And Sophie, did we mention it's no charge, no cost?
No charge, no cost. It's for you guys, it's for us to be with more tools to deal with the craziness outside.
Thank you so much, Sophie. I would like to thank, I really feel bad we didn't touch all the questions. We would love to have a follow-up, and we'd love to have you stay. I wanted to wrap up with this special slide. These are, I mean, this is what makes me wake up in the morning. The next generation, the leaders of our future, these specific students are leaders and taking action and raising the voice for our people. Very special people. Our students are phenomenal. Our staff and faculty are phenomenal. And it's very, I feel like it's a privilege to work in this space, unfortunately for our community, but being able to regain control over our lives, raise our voice, and do this together is a privilege. It's really a privilege and a responsibility. And with that, I would like to thank everyone that made the time to join. I, again, feel bad for all the questions. So if you want to stay, we would love to take the questions and maybe write them down and follow up with a session just to answer the questions. So, because we really want to give you like a support and answer those, because there's different types of questions. I want to say thank you, Elan, for all the work that you do. And Alyza, thank you so much. Thanks each and every one of you. I recognize some of the faces here, and I'm very grateful that you're here. Sophie, thank you for being my partner in crime, for making this happen. And if you want to stay, you're welcome to stay. We have 21 more minutes to stay, answer questions, connect, engage in an informal conversation so you could feel comfortable. Just you're welcome to stay. Whoever wants to leave, you're welcome to go back to your, evening, afternoon activities. And we hope to see you soon in the next session. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I hope we'll be able to answer all the questions. I see one raised hand, Sheila Berenson. Am I pronouncing it right? Yeah. Oh, we need to unmute you. Sorry. Yeah.
I left a couple messages, but I'm not sure if you saw them. I have a couple things. I'm actually working with the Brandeis Center with one of your attorneys for the state of Massachusetts, and they had said that Brandeis was already working with California, and I heard what, that judge was wonderful. And I guess New York they're working with, and they're looking at coming into Massachusetts. I don't get it though. It's wonderful to hear that if you get federal money, then you have to behave yourself. But they aren't. I mean, I don't know what California is doing. California is the example you gave us. So that sounds so straightforward. And on top of that, to just add to that, something that drives a lot of us nuts is we sense if this was going on with blacks. Yeah, we can't imagine what's going on with Jews would ever have any air if they were doing the same things towards blacks on campus. And yet it is. So I just wanted to get your input on that one, as well as what the judge said in California. Does that kind of like just make it much easier for us now, maybe?
What I hear you. I've heard that multiple times. What if you can, put your finger, what is it that you think we should use in this with this narrative? What would it be?
Yeah, well, looking at two levels. One, the K through 12 is what I'm working on myself here in Massachusetts, but the harassment, the fears, they're copying what California has done. It's not the schools, but it's the unions that are developing all this stuff, and we've even gotten some of their hidden talks that basically talk about how they cannot get caught. And there was something that came out in California too. And then of course we've all seen the universities, and living in Boston, we've seen a lot with that. I don't understand how it's wonderful to hear, and the schools can't afford. A lot of schools get maybe 6% from federal monies, but schools are so hurting for money, they need that 6%. How is it still going on? How are the unions allowed to get away with this? I don't know. I mean, you're the experts, as well as how is it happening to Jews? And in the old days, we know it would have happened to the blacks, but not nowadays. My God, it'd come down hard. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. That's a very big question. I wish we had all the answers, but and dissecting it and trying to, I will say you've raised a lot of issues. The unions is kind of a kingdom of itself, a bad kingdom, and they have we've been issuing some of the lawsuits. We're doing some work and unions, and I think the civic engagement course might handle some of, might be able to shed some light on how we can, move the needle or get involved. I'll tell you what I say to, when faculty and postdocs come to me and say this union and share all the, the resolutions, the ridiculous resolutions and their bias. Get involved. You're a postdoc. Go get elected, go to the meetings, go get elected to have a part and role there and make an impact, because we cannot rely, unfortunately, on regulations to be enforced, on rules to be enforced, and unions are a different type of a breed. So there's some things they could do and something they can't do. We are behind a few lawsuits. It takes time to generate a lawsuit that stands against unions. And sometimes we work with the postdocs or faculty or students to generate that. So we will have evidence for court. So that's the level of unions. I will tell you that in one of the hearings at the Congress, what you said about the Afro-American community and the resemblance to what the Jewish people are going through right now. We had congressmen from one side that were, saying if you were a Black kid, you weren't here, to our students. And I guess they're right. And I think, again, we need to raise our voice. We need to, if you say you have evidence about internal communication that's legally obtained, that can make a case in a conversation with the administration or in a on a lawsuit if it's relevant. We really need to understand the specific case and tackle it. And on a strategic level, it's the getting involved and being elected to roles that you can make an impact. And many times, the committee members told us, we wouldn't know what we know if it weren't for you, if it weren't for, the community who shared all of this, because universities didn't share this information with us. But once we had that, we could hold them accountable and ask them to address it. So I know it's not a sufficient answer for sure, but as of now, these are, and if you want to connect separately, I would love to see what is it, that you need help with in this specific union, really case by case.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sharon Ben Levy. I'm just looking at who I see that raises hands. So I see Sharon and then Debbie.
Thank you very much. So I believe that, stopping anti-Semitic students is dealing with the insurmountable scale of the symptom. I believe that the root cause is actually stemming from a few professors indoctrinating other students. Is there any way to deal with that?
Yes. I think we didn't have time to discuss with the future legislation. I really, cross my fingers that they'll be able, the committees will be able to pass those bills that increase the level of scrutiny of both students and faculty for supporting terror. And what does that mean? Right now, the standard that allows to hold them accountable is based on the standard that's direct support in terror. So it's direct support, which is very, very limited and very, very narrow. And the idea would be to heighten the level of scrutiny to material support, which is what we're trying to advocate in lawsuits right now. Before the legislation changed, we were trying to argue that in court, that material support, so public relations for Hamas and saying I support Hamas is considered material support for this scrutiny level, scrutiny standard. If that will pass, we will be able to hold faculty accountable better with additional changes in enforcing regulations. It sounds like a very minor change, but it's a huge change in terms of what it captures within. So that's just one example of how legislation is needed. There's a gap, a big gap in policies and inconsistency. And again, the report is just the beginning, because the real work starts now. How do we change the legislation? How do we create a different, how do we signal universities that this is an essential matter? It's not a public relation matter. It's not how they're viewed by the public. It's not only the federal funds, but it's essential matter. So that's like the big picture of that. It's not happening tomorrow, but it is in process, and bills are being drafted, and hopefully they'll be able to pass them. So I guess we all hope for this to happen soon. And I will say faculty should be hold to higher standards as faculty. We collect information about faculty members in order to make a case for the university, whether it's a complaint, whether it's a conversation, and whether it's a lawsuit. So if you have any information about faculty members, I urge you and encourage you to share that so we could take action. Again, case by case. I wish I had, just a, a general magic wand, but it has to be case by case. But I hope we'll have good updates in the future, in the near future, about legislation. I see Debbie, GM, and Danielle. And if there's more, just raise your hand. So Debbie, let's unmute you.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you. So in our school, public school, they don't track anti-Semitism. They track discrimination. So there's no separate category for anti-Semitism. It's tracked as one big broad category, and the only two that would qualify as anti-Semitism is national origin discrimination and religion.
Shared ancestry. Okay. And
And
shared
religion.
ancestry. Yeah.
So that is lumped together with all other, one number, with all other religious discrimination and national origin discrimination. So it's not obvious which one is paired out as anti-Semitism. So I think this is a major problem, that there's no separate category for anti-Semitism. It's all lumped together. So I want to talk with them about what are the categories that should be used. And I just listened to the Massachusetts Commission, and the ADL reported that they use harassment, vandalism, and assault, but that misses many things. Even though that's what they track, it misses hate speech, and it misses the leader of public protests that talk about wanting to kill Jews, or support what happened on October 7th. So for a school system, K through 12, what would you suggest are the categories that we should ask for to track anti-Semitism?
Debbie, can I ask, is it okay to ask which school, or
Sure,
you don't have to share?
Newton Public School in Massachusetts.
It's a very important question. The separate category is something we should make a case for. I would love to this is a long conversation. I would love to take this separately and bring in the experts for K-12 from the organization. What we see is, and I'm talking from campus experience, but what I see in schools too, but this is not my domain, is that our students, there's a reluctancy to acknowledge how severe and serious it is. So it's very easy to not look at the shared ancestry, right? And it's really important for us to push it. It's Title VI uses the term shared ancestry. So within Title VI, this should be a category. I really want to have we have to discuss this separately and understand that better, why you think it's not a separate category. There's no separate category for Jews, but there is discrimination based on shared ancestry. And Jews could be captured by religion, by shared ancestry, and Israelis by shared ancestry. That's easier. I want to take this separately so I'll understand better, because Newton's system is huge, and I live in Massachusetts, and we have all the expertise. So and again, sorry, there's no I wish I had do this and this and it will work, but there has to be a work with the administration, with a process. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but with a process, with showing what's happening, how this will work. How is this effective for the school? Not only for the Jewish students and Israeli students, going to make their life better, to acknowledge that. And so I would love to, again, to discuss this and give you the expertise from K-12. And Sophie, unmuted, because I think she wants to say.
Could you post your email?
Of course,
Yeah,
and Sophie wants to say something too.
Yeah, Debbie, we have all your emails, guys, and we will connect with you immediately after the meeting, and we will send you the emails, and then we'll find time to connect.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, I'm just putting mine here, just title it just because, but we're gonna do it in a organized manner as well. Okay. GM, let's unmute GM. See if we can unmute. Okay. We have 5 more minutes. Ask to unmute. I'm trying to unmute. Yes. No, Sophie, can you help me?
Yeah, I'm trying.
Do you want to write your question in the chat? We can't unmute you for some reason.
Is this for Danielle?
That was for GM, but Danielle, if you're unmuted, please share your question. And GM, can you just share? GM, we can't hear you. Can you just write your question so we'll address it after Danielle? Thank you.
So I have a situation in our community. I live in Arlington, Virginia, and we have a teacher at one of our local public high schools. Her name is Shemaya Al-Hanuti, and her father was the 1992 co-conspirator for the World Trade Center bombing. So her father was very involved in Hamas and the mosque that, was very involved with the 9/11 and everything like that. And in this case, the apple does not fall far from the tree. And for years, she has been sending out pretty inflammatory stuff to not only the teachers within the school, but to the students, has targeted Jewish students. It actually made national news with, I think it was the Ben Shapiro thing. I think it was the Daily Wire. Is that the name of his thing? Anyways, it was a national thing. And I think the Daily Mail picked it up. Mostly the conservative organizations. I don't happen to be conservative, but I happen to know because I've seen the FOIA of emails to the teachers and all of these things. And this has been going on for a long time. I've actually even been involved with, the school administration, and yet she continues to teach and spew her stuff, and we can't get rid of her. I mean, it's really frustrating. This has been going on for this long. I mean, we have all kinds of stuff against her. And, we really need, I think, an outside hand to, look at kind of the legal ramifications of this. So that's one thing that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
I know this is kind of an off topic, but, the erasure of the Jewish experience. So we have another parent who just, I also run a group called Arlington Parents Against Anti-Semitism. And a parent had described how she went to a fellow parent birthday party. And when she got there, there were some other parents that were there who started yelling at her, "Free Palestine," was really trying to erase her experience within the social setting. It was not in a public, it was at a restaurant. And, I know that there's probably not that much they can do because it's, free speech, I'm assuming. But, I don't know if this has been happening. I know that there's been a few instances that I've heard of the parents being targeted.
Yeah.
I can see that, that social ostracize, these parents as well, not just the students. Is there a trend that's going on, and what what are you supposed to do in that situation? I mean, I think, you know, in this particular case, she didn't know what to do. You know, you know,
Yeah.
and you know,
Yeah.
how do you deal with that kind of situation?
So I would say for those two, so those are very specific scenarios, which we need to see the evidence and really walk, you know, like Shield, just see the evidence, talk to you, understand exactly the factual chronology, and then see whether this is legal, whether this is a discussion with the administration, which is something else. Maybe it's a letter we need to just share from, you know, with a lot of signatures. It really depends. What I will say is gather the information, come to our trainings and other, you know, there are other organizations training as well, but I know what we offer. And so you're able to know what to do. So people call us all the time or email us and we train them. This is how you should talk to your school. This is what you should emphasize. But we have to go through the specific scenario because any general advice would be negligence, you know, negligent to give you. So again, let's go over what happened and let's help you and give you the tools on how to either act yourself or how we can support you so you could act. And Sherry here is on the call. I'm calling you out, Sherry, because she's a member, and if I can't see Kieran here, so apologies if Kieran is here. So Kieran and Kaylee, who are my partners in crime for Shield. So we have a team and we can help you. Just reach out to us and give us a call and let's go over the evidence. Let's go over the chronology and let's see how we can, what are the tools that we need to provide you?
So how do you differ in a sense from the Brandeis, you know, because I actually,
I'll explain.
And just so you know, I also have a student that's at the University of Virginia, and somehow, maybe because I have a loud mouth or something, I got appointed by the university chief of police to serve on a safety and security committee. And because I was on that committee, I was able to put in a proposal to get the university to bring an anti-Semitism program. So I brought Alyza Lewin and I brought Boundless, you know, and
great.
And some other people. Yeah, so it was a really good thing. But I will say that's a roundabout way also for some people to kind of maybe get their foot in the door as a parent, to go through some of the, you know, some of these committees to see if you can get on it. But I did mention, you know, to Alyza Lewin, you know, about the situation. So I'm not sure, you know, like what's the line that's drawn between what you guys do and what she would do.
It's a good point. It's a good point, Danielle. I will explain. So we don't provide legal. What we don't do is we don't provide legal counseling. Although I'm a lawyer, I'm not giving legal counseling in no way. We don't give mental health counseling services. But what we do is look at the case holistically and examine it. And then we help you find a variety of options in this scenario to act upon. In some of the cases, this would be building a legal case. Sometimes the case is not mature. It happens multiple times, and we need to know if you're ready to build it because it builds over time. So if needed, we don't just refer you to Alyza, but we walk you through, and if there's a gaps that we need to fill in between the meetings, not everybody is ready to talk to lawyers and wants to talk to a lawyer. So we liaise. So we don't give legal services, but we liaise on that matter. But when we look at this holistically, sometimes it's a mixture. It's a combination of legal service, legal referrals with, you know, walking you through every step of the way, but also communicating to the administration constantly and demanding accountability and backing you up so you're not alone. We have like 2-3 more minutes to wrap up. I just talk to us. Let's see what is it. If this is completely handled by legal services and there's nothing else we can do, then that's fine. But if there's anything else, there's letters that we send to presidents. There's a lot of strategic communication we're doing to presidents of universities. We can add this matter to that as well. So those are the type of things that we can do. For one example, October 7th, many universities denied Israeli and Jewish students the opportunity to hold their October 7th memorial ceremony in an appropriate location and venue. So we sent a letter to 30 universities, and it was a very academic language, a letter with academic language of how this is not good for them, not for our students, for them. And I don't know if it made an impact, but we did not have any complaint eventually. Maybe one that was kind of, they didn't let them to write kidnapped or murdered. And I'm like, okay, you want us to lie, we can lie and make it softer for you, the reality, but the reality is that they were murdered and kidnapped. But that was the only complaint we've got. So we really, this is like a separate conversation because it's very specific and we need to understand the specifics. And I want to address, because we have 2 more minutes, I want to address GM's question, which is, interestingly, I wanted to ask a follow-along question to Debbie regarding codifying anti-Semitism into civil rights as part of the positive congressional report. Will the Senate now, with a new majority, readdress incorporating the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act into law? And can this accelerate bolstering our legal options? The honest answer is, I don't know. The briefing we had participated in with the committees, what I can share is that the effort of the Congress is across 5 committees, not just one. It's led by the Workforce and Education, but it's the Tax Commission to deny and revoke tax exemption for organizations that support terror and act on campus. And there was a request from the Tax Committee to revoke for 8 organizations. It's listed on a report. It's the Immigration Committee. It's the Means and Ways Committee, and Workforce and Education. I forgot the 5th one, but it's a cross committees effort, which is great because it's orchestrated across all areas. So they did not share anything about Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, but they did share the heightening the scrutiny and standards and adoption of IRA, and make a clear, consistent policy to be enforced, which is in some ways what the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act is doing. It's really hard to say what they're going to do with the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, but it wasn't part of the briefing, so I can't tell you for sure. But that's the direction in general. We really have to wrap up. There's many people, like, I see your questions. I can call you after, Gilat. I see your raising hand. We have to wrap up because it's 9:38 already. And I want Sophie to say just a few more words about School Watch for K to 12, because we had a few questions of School Watch. Gilat, if you want to share your question in the chat, I can take it after Sophie, and then we can wrap up. Thank you.
Just to tell you, we will send an email. I said it before. We'll send an email with all our emails and the way to connect with us. And then you more than welcome to send us questions, because we know we're dealing with all this situation, like the stories you share with us all the time. Like Sagit shared before about the shield, we have the same system for school to provide you support for parents, for students, for teachers. And we will share it with you in the email too, to connect you with our professional that can help you and guide you how to work with school, how to work with the district. And Elan talked about it a little bit. We have a lot of success, and sometimes we are not succeeding enough. We have a lot of work to do, but we need you to guide us. Where is the place we need to be involved and to help you to find a solution? And we know how to do it, and we would love to give you all the information in the email we will send you later. Thank you, Sagit.
Yes. Gilad, do you want, thank you so much, Sophie. Gilad, do you want to send your question or we try to unmute you? Just last one, because I cannot not answer your question. And I saw you raise your hand. Is this still relevant? Let's see if we can't unmute you for some reason. If you want to just write your question. Sophie, Debbie is saying, I tried to sign into the class. It says it is 200 or 50 to register. I thought you mentioned that it is free. Is there a separate code to plug in?
Yes, we share the code and we will send you in the email the code later. Then you get it for free. We will send it in the letter immediately after the meeting.
Okay, awesome. Sorry if you already said that and I missed that. Okay. Thank you all. Please be in touch. And I see another message. It says Gilad, I have to answer that. No. Thank you. And we'll continue if that's helpful and we'll get a good feedback. We'll follow up on another session for, I'm sure it's not gonna be boring for any of us anytime soon. Thanks everyone. You're all welcome to reach out to me, to my email. And in our website, we have a link to Shield and it's going to be sent in the email as Sophie mentioned. So we're here for you and thank you for joining us. And have a wonderful evening, rest of your evening and night. Thank you. Good night.